Somewhere over the English Channel, the RAF expected bombs. They expected fighters. They expected everything Germany had learned to deliver. They did not expect paper. In a sealed block inside a Nazi concentration camp, 142 prisoners were doing something that had never been attempted at this scale in history. They were building a perfect copy of the British pound. Not a rough forgery, not something you'd spot under a jeweler's loupe. Something so accurate that when the Bank of England's own examiners tested these notes, they passed. 132 million pounds worth. And the plan wasn't to spend it. The plan was to drop it from the sky. Worth saying up front, this is a historical account of wartime economic warfare. Nothing here is instructional. This is the story of one of the most audacious financial attacks ever conceived, and why it ultimately failed to land. This is Money Origins, where we follow the history of money into the darkest places it's ever been taken. By the end of this, you'll understand how the Nazis weaponized the concept of trust itself. Trust in currency, trust in institutions. Trust that the pound in your wallet is actually worth something. And you'll understand why the Bank of England had to burn its entire identity to recover from a plan that technically never fully worked. The most unsettling part isn't what happened, it's how close it came. The operation started with a name: Alfred Naujoks. In 1939, he pitched the idea to the SS. Flood Britain with counterfeit pounds, trigger inflation, collapse civilian confidence in the economy. The concept was simple. Execution was the problem. Early attempts were crude. The paper was wrong. The ink was wrong. The serial number logic was wrong. British banknotes of that era had a particular texture, a specific feel that came from linen and cotton fiber composition that took years to reverse engineer. The first forgery team produced notes that were basically props. So the SS restructured everything. They handed the operation to SS Major Bernhard Kruger, a meticulous, technically minded officer who understood that this wasn't a printing problem. It was an engineering problem. Kruger's first move: find the right people. Not German printers, prisoners. At Sachsenhausen concentration camp, north of Berlin, Kruger assembled specialists: engravers, graphic artists, typesetters, paper chemists, bank clerks who understood serial number sequencing. Men who, in any other context, would have been prized professionals. Here, they were leverage. Work on the forgeries, and you stayed alive. Refuse, and the calculation was different. The operation was given its official name, Operation Bernhard, after Kruger himself. By 1942, Block 19 at Sachsenhausen had been converted into a sealed workshop. Blacked out windows, armed guards, no contact with the rest of the camp. Inside, the prisoners began solving, one by one, every technical problem that had defeated the earlier teams. The paper formula took months. The engraving of the watermark, the intricate Britannia figure embedded in every genuine note, took longer. The serial number logic required someone who actually understood how the Bank of England sequenced its issues. They found that person too. What they built, eventually, was not a copy. It was a duplicate. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The plan for what to do with 132 million pounds in perfect fake British pounds was, by any measure, brilliant. The original proposal wasn't to use the notes in occupied Europe, though that happened too, and the Nazis did circulate some through neutral countries like Switzerland and Turkey to fund intelligence operations. The core plan was different. The Luftwaffe would fly low over British cities and simply drop the notes. Millions of pounds falling from the sky. Think about what that does to a population already under the stress of wartime rationing. Suddenly, there's free money everywhere. People pick it up, they spend it. Merchants can't tell real from fake, because neither can the banks. Prices rise. The government tries to pull notes from circulation but can't move fast enough. The pound's credibility begins to fracture. You don't need to bomb a bank to destroy it. You just need people to stop believing in it. The Luftwaffe bombing campaign over Britain was already faltering by the time the notes were ready. The aircraft capacity for this kind of operation, essentially a psychological bombing run with paper instead of ordnance, never materialized at scale. The war's momentum was shifting. Resources were being pulled east, and so 132 million pounds sat in crates. The war ended. Germany collapsed, and Kruger, under direct orders, had the crates transported to the Austrian Alps and dumped, along with the printing equipment, the plates, the paper stock, into Lake Toplitz and several surrounding alpine lakes. Divers found the first crates in 1959. More recoveries followed over the decades. Some notes were still in remarkable condition. Some had degraded. A significant portion was never recovered at all. Which means there are almost certainly Operation Bernhard notes still in existence, in collections, in old wallets, in estate lots that nobody has examined closely enough. Here's the detail that tends to land hard when people first hear it. After the war, the Bank of England commissioned a full technical review of the forged notes. The conclusion was stark. The forgeries were so well executed that the bank couldn't create a reliable detection method that would work at scale for the public. The standard counterfeit checking techniques of the era were insufficient, so they did something they had never done before. They withdrew every high-denomination note in circulation. The 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds, and redesigned them from the ground up. New paper composition, new security thread, new typography. A complete architectural overhaul of what a British banknote was. Operation Bernhard didn't destroy the British economy, but it forced Britain to destroy its own currency, intentionally, surgically, and rebuild it. The Nazi counterfeiting program is the direct reason why post-war British banknotes looked fundamentally different from their pre-war predecessors. A weapon that never fully fired still changed the shape of the target. They built a weapon out of paper and trust, specifically out of the gap between a real thing and a perfect imitation of it. The notes never fell over London. The inflation never came. The plan that was supposed to bring Britain to its knees without a single bullet ended up in the cold water of an Austrian lake. But here's what the Bank of England understood that Germany perhaps didn't. The danger wasn't the fake money. The danger was the knowledge that fake money could be made that well. Once that knowledge existed, it couldn't be answered with detection. It could only be answered with redesign. The pound that survived the war wasn't the pound that entered it. And in a strange way, Bernhard Kruger, an SS officer running a concentration camp forgery ring, left a permanent mark on every British banknote issued in the decades that followed. That's what happens when you counterfeit something well enough. Even if you lose, you change it. Worth noting, this video covers historical events for educational purposes. The economics, the security design, the human cost, it's all documented history, not instruction. If this kind of story sits with you, where money, power, and desperation collide, there's another one waiting. The California Gold Rush is usually told as an adventure. What it actually was is something closer to a warning. How gold destroyed the men who found it. That's the next one. It's already up.